everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to sobriety.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So before we get started, as always, we want to remind everyone that we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Make sure you go on all those platforms, listen, watch, like, subscribe, share. Sharing really is the biggest thing, that and rating. We want to keep our content free and accessible, and we want to make sure that, everybody is getting what they need out of it. And in order to do that, you have to share. Sharing is caring. Make sure you're rating it. Ratings really is, we all know how algorithms work, is what pushes it out to everything. So anytime you interact with the podcast on any platforms, it pretty much just makes it so it incentivizes that platform to push it out to more people. So make sure you're doing all of those things, pretty please.
The ratings are the big thing. Please rate, review, share. You know what you said? Share the podcast.
Make sure you share the podcast.
There you go.
And you also want to share it.
And please share it.
Yeah, sharing is caring. So anyways, who do we have today?
Today we have a special guest who is actually in the future. So she is actually here tomorrow.
You did that same thing.
I know. Except she's in a different country. She's all the way from Australia. One of my fellow champions and good friend, Kat Lee. Hey, Kat.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Hello.
How are you doing today? I'm so glad you joined us on the podcast.
Me too.
From the future.
From the future.
Yeah. From a great Sunday.
I love it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. I know I had to twist your arm a lot to come on here. The good news is you're coming up here in just a few days on 2 years of sobriety, which is absolutely incredible.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I need to add sound effects.
Yeah, that's right.
Cheering. Yeah.
So I've got to ask you, since you've been sober almost 2 years now, what has been like the biggest change that you've noticed since becoming sober?
Oh, so it's sort of, there are so many that it kind of adds up. It's like, 1,000 little things that all come together to create this mountain sort of thing. But I think the last couple of weeks, one that's really been standing out has just been my self-talk. From the second that I wake up, like I had a really scary dream the other week. It was horrifying. And when I woke up, the first thought that popped into my head was, it's okay, sweetie. We're going to be okay. It's fine. It's fine. Let's get a coffee. And and then I sort of stopped and, processed that. I was like, oh my God, I never spoke to myself like that. Like I was so mean. It was just all go, 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 push, push, push. Nothing's good enough. Be better, be faster, be kinder, be more, be more, be more. So to have like my first thought of the morning just be this super sweet, I think I called myself Poppet as well. Like it was really quite cute. And it happens all the time now. So I think that's probably the nicest. Like I'm my own best friend now. Like it's nice.
I love that. I mean, the way we speak to ourselves and our internal monologue is so important, but it's one of those things that's been with you since, before you can remember, like from birth. So we have a tendency to just like pretend like it's not there. It's kind of like object permanence, where it's something that's in the room that you walk by and it's been there so long you don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that when you start any sort of like therapy or recovery, mental health, like anytime you're doing any sort of wellness, that's one of the first things is like really giving that inner voice a platform and making it as loud as possible. And 99.99999% of people are like, I'm so fucking mean to myself. Like, why do I do that?
And that's the thing about it. It's like, compassion, we talk a lot in recovery about compassion. And I think like as a society, it's always outward facing. You know, it's we judge ourselves on the way we treat others, and you know, yeah, it's like a big part of our identity is, do other people think that we're a good person, we're a kind person, are we someone that they would turn to? But I think someone once said this, I don't know if it was in a meeting or a podcast or where, but they said compassion is binary. So if you're not compassionate with yourself, you are not a compassionate person.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't investigate that any further. I was like, I'm just going to take that and run with it as if it's the truth, because I want to get there. I want to be someone who I can, if I'm alone in my room and I'm the only person listening, I can say with evidence that I'm a compassionate person. And I feel like that's probably the biggest win this last couple of years is I think I'm a compassionate person now. Mm-hmm. I can probably go a little bit further because there's like always, you know, outliers and growth edges and, you know, situations where you revert, like an old neural pathway will just like pop up, right? But they're outliers now. They're not my standard.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough one too. That's really good because that's normally like, that is one of the hardest things for people to overcome, you know, and it goes back to like when you're a kid or you have kids and you're like, well, anybody who makes you feel bad about something or whatever, that's just them projecting how they feel inside. And when you're a kid or a teenager, even like a young adult, you think it's just one, like, you maybe believe it, but you think it's like this blanket statement of like everything happens for a reason or you can be anything you want. And though all those things are true, you don't realize how true that one is, right? Like we have a 13-year-old daughter and we tell her all the time, you know, people who are self-aware and are what we consider successful, which has nothing to do with money or life, just inner success, like happy, healthy, evolving people don't really ever speak down or non-compassionately towards others because you are self-aware enough that you understand the human experience is a roller coaster ride.
Like your success, I 100% agree. Like success is not needing to ever punch down because you're playing life like golf. You're competing against you yesterday. Every single time. Anyone else that happens to be on the fairway with you is a companion. They're not your competition. And so, yeah, like being able to speak kindly about other people, it's a symptom of, like a really good one, of being happy with today's golf score, you know?
Yeah, that's something I think that you struggle with a lot, Ryan. I love you so much, but we were talking about that earlier, like, you know, and again, it's not like a character defect. It is part of the mental health component of it. And I see a lot with you, and it's sad really because you still really struggle with things that you did or that you're still grappling with when you were in your active addiction. And though you're so far removed, and you know, this is not secluded to just addiction. Like we have this self-loathing and this guilt, and like anything else, when it builds up, you need some sort of release, and you have you get irritable or you feel insecure or whatever that it is, and then it flows out, right? And that's something that, you know, we talk about a lot. And I even do that and I don't even struggle with drinking, like just with my mental health. Like I'll get overstimulated or hyper focusing on something. And then you'll come up and be like, hey, and I'm like, why are you talking to me right now? And he's like, I just need you to ask a question. But the feeling of being so irate that you interrupted my hyper focus just makes me explode. Now, my reaction is my responsibility and I should know better, right? And that's the hard part, is realizing, you know, you didn't do anything wrong. I got frustrated because I was overstimulated because of something that I'm not happy with what I'm doing. So that's a huge one, Kat. That's like, I struggle with that all the time. I love that. And that really, I'm sure, does show to everyone in your life too.
Yeah, I think so. There's a calmness that kind of comes with it as well, because I think the other thing is like when you're not compassionate with yourself, there's like this simmering thing underneath, and we pick that up from each other, right? Like you can be with someone in a room and not know that person from a bar of soap, but you feel their energy, and you just know, first you know whether or not you're safe with that person, if you're really listening to your inner voice, right? And then you know, are you pulling from this person or are they taking from you? And no words have even been spoken. Like these sort of exchanges kind of happen between humans. And I think when someone is kind to themselves, you get so much just in their presence, because there's this calmness. Like calmness isn't a lack of something, it's the existence of something. Like I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
like
But you can even pick
feel
up
it.
on it when someone's just speaking. You know, you could almost tell the way they kind of treat themselves. I know I catch myself doing it often where it's weird. It's like the first year of sobriety, I learned to love myself again, because all I did was basically kill myself and hated myself for so many years. So I learned that, and then here we are in year 2, and now like Jessica said, some of the regret stuff has come back to me over the past, I don't know how many months, and it just rears its ugly head. And then I'm not nice to myself because I'm like, God, you're a fucking idiot. What the hell were you thinking? Look what you've done. Look what you did. How are other people perceiving you? This is all stuff that I kind of really moved on from. And now it's like, here I am back in this damn spot again. But the good news is I'm dealing with it now with a clear head, where I wasn't doing that before. So, it's like anything else. It's a work in progress. I mean, it's a daily thing, kind of like what we do with the challenge. We, say something, a great affirmation to yourself every day, learning to love yourself up. And it's, some days it's challenging, but if you do it, it kind of, at least it gets the ball rolling, kind of gets you started for your day too. I don't know if that's something you've been doing or
100%.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I kind of think like I'm one of those people, I like games. It's actually probably to answer your original question about the 2-year mark and like what's the coolest thing. I like the hierarchy of values. Like in Reframe, we had a coach when I first started called Kiola, who was just like the woman is a goddess. Like she changed my life in so many ways. She doesn't even know my name, but she just had so much impact on me. And she did these meetings that were all about setting goals. And that just is perfect for my personality type because I love to play. And so that's what's dawned on me as well. Like January is all about thinking and reflection for me, because it's all like in the lead up to 28, And so I was like revisiting my hierarchy of values, and I kind of like I knew what they were, and then you sort of try to design the activities in your life to encompass that or support each of those values, and then you build up enough of those and you've got a life that you don't want to escape from. That's like my logic, right? And it dawned on me the other day, I was like, playfulness is one of my values, but it's just been hiding in plain sight because my soberversary is International Lego Day.
Yes.
So it's like been
and you're a big Lego person.
It's been sitting there waiting for me to notice it, Because I put everything in games. Everything. I'm a very kind of playful person because that's where like I can do my deep work. It's like creativity is that connects to, I don't know, it connects all of the things because you let go in a way that you can't if you're scared. And if you're creative, that means that I don't know if it's the parasympathetic or the sympathetic, but whichever is the fight or flight version of the nervous system, if you're in creative mode, it means that is switched off, because the two can't kind of coexist. So I like challenges because it encourages that playful side,
Yeah.
I love that. I wish I could get into Legos. I always thought that like Legos, and I've talked about not the Lego thing, but about like puzzles and like coloring books. I always, when I was first like diagnosed, I always thought I would be great at that because it gives me something to hyper focus on. And this is the awesome thing about really getting in touch with your brain is it is so intricate and it is so weird, and it's never functioning the way that you think. And I mean that in a good way. So like, I learned very quickly, I cannot do Legos. I cannot do puzzles. I cannot do like an adult coloring book. And the reason is because when I see all of the pieces or this thing, I get so overwhelmed because I know when I start something, I cannot stand to not finish it. So kind of like the whole when I said, you know, I become irate if you like interrupt me while I'm like reading or doing something. Yeah. And that reaction is not okay. I just feel like I need to throw that out there. That's not like a, well, you know, I'm going to get pissed, so don't interrupt me. That's not the solution either. Okay. But then I will also go to the other side of things and be like, well, I'm not going to do the laundry, or I'm not going to clean the bathroom, or I'm not going to do the thing because I know I can't finish it. So why even start it? Right. So it's like this like catch-22 situation. I think, you know, I've really gotten into reading like you are with puzzles. I really love to read now because it has that same thing. It's creative. It causes my mind to like flow, and I ask questions, and, you know, kind of like when I'm watching a movie, the same thing. He'll just be like, why are you on your phone? I'm like, well, I knew that actor from something. And so I wikied him. And did you know he's married to this person whose dad directed this movie and came from this town? And didn't your coworker like live in that town? And it's like this whole thing, right? And he's like, we're 5 minutes into the movie. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But like reading is it triggers that same thing, right? And so there'll be times where I'll be like, today I'm going in my room and I'm reading all day. And I think the first time I did it, he didn't realize that I was being literal. And he would come in there and he's like, are you still reading? I said, yeah, I told you I was going to read all day. He's like, but I didn't think you meant like sun up to sun down.
Literally all day.
I was like, yeah.
I can't help you. I can't be any clearer with my language.
Right. Right.
Know, that's the sad part.
Right. And he's like,
I would get it.
He's like, so like, you're like, are you going to leave the bed today? And I was like, Ryan, this is my mental health day. And he's like, well, like, so you're just not going to leave the room today. And I'm like, if you come back in here one more time, I'm going to throw this book at your head, you know? But it's that same thing. Like, for whatever reason, I can sit down and I can hyper focus on like the video editing or like reading a book or things like that. But when it comes to like puzzles where I can like see all the pieces, I get very overwhelmed and I just put it away before I begin. And so I think it's interesting how like, depending on where you are, your brain needs and satiates in different ways, because the majority of people love like puzzles and Legos. Like I've always wanted it because that's gotta feel so good when you like build that thing and you're like, yes, I built this.
Like what you're describing, spot on. Like, and I hear it come up a lot, especially around this time of year when everyone's starting to do like dry January, you know, and they're trying to get day one to stick, and they're like discovering like, wait, maybe I'm not a gray area drinker. Maybe I'm not a casual drinker. Maybe like you kind of hear all of that fall out, and it does get overwhelming because they're like, straight away everyone goes to forever, right? Because it's like a safety thing. Like we want to know where all the exits are. It's the exact same instinct. I need to know the blueprint of this building in order for me to step into this room. Because what if? And so I think that's where it kind of comes from, right? Like I need to be able to see the whole thing, and then I question my own competence, my own agency. I question life. Like, am I going to be lucky and be able to do this thing, or is life going to happen and then I won't be able to? And it's like we're trying to identify all of the paths that will lead to disappointment and that will reinforce that narrative that I am a loser, you know, or whatever your inner critic says to you, because it's always very individualized, right? But I think, like, for me, the way around it, because I never used to be a Lego person either. I was like the Lego window shopper. Like I'd watch other people do Lego and I wanted to be like them, but I wasn't one of them because I didn't grow up with it. It wasn't part of my story.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, well, fuck, merge with traffic, woman. Like, and then now that's how I kind of approach everything. Like, you're not on the freeway. You're not one of those people on the freeway until you choose to merge with traffic. Everyone had a day one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was the first day you did a Lego. There was the first day you spent an entire day in bed reading. Now you're a reader. Like, sometimes it's just giving yourself permission to like chunk it right down and just be like, so with people who are really struggling on day one, I'm like, your job is not to have a day two. That's not your job. Your job is to punch the next craving in the face. That's your only job. You are a sober warrior and give yourself permission to lose every other craving battle coming for you today, for this week, this month, whenever. Your only job is to kick the shit out of the next one. Then after that, you can drink. And it's just like giving yourself that power to own how big it is. So I don't know. I challenge you, Jess.
I know.
Get like a kick-ass big Lego and then only make the flower. That's it.
I already have anxiety. Just the flower.
Just thinking about it.
I don't know. See, already I'm like, but I'll be like, I can just start this other little piece. And then it'll end up with me upstairs in the hallway with Legos everywhere. And Ryan coming upstairs going, what is happening?
I will say Lego has gotten really good. And this is probably over the past 10 years. I've helped put a lot of Legos together. And I will say Lego was really smart about that because when I was in my younger years doing Legos, they came in a box and you literally emptied out the whole fucking box all over the floor, piecing it all together. Now, and I'm surely this is by design, which I think is brilliant, is they do bags inside the boxes, which is smart, right? Because you do the first, bag, which is not very obviously it's usually easy and they kind of work their way up. I think it's brilliant.
It's probably because a lot of people like me
or like you
at like 4 o'clock
like,
in the morning writing like sleep deprived, hate mail to Lego.
Fuck off.
Yeah, they couldn't get the staff to know. They were like, we can't get our customer support team to step.
That's right.
I have a question about Lego too. So, and I don't know much about Lego, right? So, are you one of the ones that like you build them and like glue them and like collect them, or do you build do you keep them together? Do you just that would be the other thing is like I think here I am what ifing. I'm like, what if I build this beautiful thing and then it just gets knocked down?
The cat knocks it off.
No.
That's the thing about it. Like, so the very first Lego I've ever owned, I'm making it sound like I'm this Lego ambassador who just has.
I love it.
It's so cool. I know it's such a big part, so I think it's cool.
So the very first Lego I ever owned is Groot, and he's like dancing, right? He's dancing Groot, and a very beloved member of my virtual family gave it to me as a present. And I, since then, have moved house a few times. And Groot has been knocked over so many times. And he can't stand up properly anymore. He looks drunk. He looks like he's doing the Billy Connolly dressage walk. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that. If not, you should Google it. Billy Connolly doing a drunk walk is very funny. But that's what it looks like. He's barely standing and kind of leaning backwards on another thing. And there's just bits of him everywhere because I don't know where the instructions are. I'm not going to do this with you again, Groot, okay? Like, I'm so tired of you falling apart. But then he kind of represents the before days for me now. I'm like, yeah, you are 2022, Because the first Lego I bought for myself was my first soberversary. And so I've got these little traditions that I just invented. And I like the whole, word for the year intention kind of thing. But then I turned that into a game as well, where it's like, that's Marco. And then at the end of the year, what's your polo word? Like, so I'm going into the year looking for freedom in 2023. But what I actually ended up finding was inner peace, which I didn't know was an option. I didn't understand any of the neuroscience. I didn't understand any of it, right? So it was a nice surprise. And so the Lego set that I bought myself was the Tranquil Garden because it represented 2023, the same as Groot represents 2022. So I don't know. It's okay if they fall apart, I guess, because they're going to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
You just
I like that. And it's also very symbolic. Like, we as humans are imperfect and we fall apart sometimes. You know, and that, I mean, I get that. I get that sort of metaphor and everything. It's that, it goes back to that whole, like, you can always rebuild and evolve, you know, and we've talked about this before, and it depends on who you are, and something different works for everybody. But, you know, you don't necessarily always have to start over from day one. Like, I get the mentality of that, and I understand how that works for a lot of people. And even me, depending on the situation, I'm like, okay, I need a hard reset. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, you don't lose. And this could be if you fall off of sobriety or anything in your life. Like, you don't have to just go, well, now I have to start all over. Now I'm back to day one. Says who? Says who? If that's what works for you, is to go back and just be like, clean slate, great. But I don't think that a hiccup should completely erase all of the hard work and effort and everything that you did. Because again, the human experience is fucking hard. It doesn't give you an okay to do shitty things. But also you have to be kind to yourself and understand that, you know, this is an imperfect
trying to
system.
get to is the other thing. Sometimes we just need to stop and think, where am I trying to get to? Like, why was it so important that I get there? And why do I have to get there in this specific way? And why does all of that matter? And the answer is almost invariably, it doesn't. You know, because I'm one of those people, I believe in objective truth. And I also believe I am physiologically incapable of ever understanding it because I'm just a human. So, you know, I've only got certain functions and capacities, and so I'll never know fully what it is. So at any given moment, I'm working with, let's say, 3 factors that are available to me, 3 variables that I can see, but there's actually 572 that are applicable to this particular thing, but I'm only capable at best of seeing 3. And maybe because I'm really new to this topic, I only see half of one. So I'm not even seeing it right. Like, it's green and I can see blue, but I can't see the yellow in it, right? So I'm working with half out of 573 or whatever I said. Me trying to then create a pattern and then turn that into an edict that I live my life by is objectively fucking stupid. Like, so sometimes just be like, you know what? I just want to make today a good day. Like, and if I can't make it a good day for other people, that's fine. I'm going to make it a good day for me. And then tomorrow I'm going to try again. That's it.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's so freeing and liberating too, because that bleeds over into other areas of your life. That goes back to what we were talking about before, is that makes you the person who you're like, you're not looking at other people with criticism or judgment or envy or anything. And you sort of, through that mentality, naturally become the person in the room that's like, you know, why are you so hyper-focused on what that person's doing? Or what does it matter? Like, everything is relative, right? And what may seem ridiculous to you is a very real feeling to someone else, right? And I mean, and we could deep dive into the whole, like, what is reality, and you only know from your perspective and your existence. But it's very freeing when you let go of that and realize, like, everyone's experience is different. And this is the only one with the information that I currently have today at this moment that I can work with. And, you know, we say this phrase, but it's more powerful than people give it credit for. Like, when you know better, you do better. And that's all that it's about, right? And then all the shit before, when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, to kind of bring us full circle. Well, okay, this person you are today is being hypercritical of that person before. but you know better today and you're doing better. So that's not fair. That's like going back and being like, oh my God, I can't believe when I was 6 years old. And this is a true story, by the way. I got kicked out of a Pizza Hut because I spilled so many sodas that they got tired of us and kicked us out. That's like me like getting down on my 6-year-old self for being a clumsy ass child. Well, I grew up, my brain finished developing, and I knew better.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you know better, you do better. And I think that's very freeing too.
Yeah.
That's a true story, by the way. I really did get kicked out of a Pizza Hut because I was so clumsy when I was a kid.
It's horrible people.
Right. Well,
Yeah. So
I didn't know that it was because of you. That's the mean bit. I'm just like, I'm sorry, this table is reserved. Like
it is very mean, but not in their defense. Just to explain, I was an extremely clumsy child. Like I had a gash on my chin for like a solid year because I could not quit hitting it on things. That my mom was like, people are gonna think that I am like beating you. I'm like, in the chin,
like of all places.
To this day, I have little like cuts and scars on my body. I think one time I was sitting on the couch and I looked around. I was like, I don't even know where that's from.
Yeah.
He's like, that's a pretty big scar. I was like, maybe I fell off my bike. I don't know.
So let's. I want to go back to what you were earlier when you were talking about someone had sent you your first Lego, and with Reframe, we develop these friendships literally all over the world. Actually, I mean, it's what brought you and I together, and other friends, New Zealand and the United Kingdom and wherever. It's just amazing. Marco Polo, which has been so cool, which is how you and I talk all the time, which is amazing. Sometimes I just forget about it, which is nuts. But I wanted to ask you, because I know, being so far away from so many people, how has your support circle, helped you throughout these past almost 2 years now?
It's been massive. So, and it's interesting because it's almost like there are two parts, two very different chapters to the story. So the second chapter, which is my Marco Polo era. But the first year was none of that. Like I had a completely different name on the forum. The first few months I was doing the challenges because obviously that suits my personality really well. And I like to learn. So it was like, oh man, I've got daily readings and then I've got these extra readings from the challenges and I'm learning all this stuff. But I had to do it myself. And I couldn't let anyone in. I didn't want anyone to rely on me. I didn't want to rely on anyone else because I was already doing a trust fall as it was with Reframe. Like giving these people any sort of access to faith felt like giving them so much power over me already that I wasn't ready to then bring a human into it and rely on a human because we're all so fallible, right? So that was the first year. It was like really, really closed off, and it was just all about getting the hang of being me. And I made all these really big changes in my life, really positive ones, because I was starting to figure out, like, I was like, okay, there's 4 parts to me. There's my soul, or my spirit, my mind, my body, and I can't remember the 4th one. There's a 4th one, like my heart, my emotional state, I need to figure out how to hear all of them and then eventually communicate with them. And the heart kind of had to come last because that is all about other people in a lot of ways. So I sort of put that off. And I had a couple of friends that I would DM with on the forum, had an accountability partner who's 4 days ahead of me. So that was just incredibly important because you need someone to go through the tough things with, and they need to be going through it at the same time as you. There's just something really powerful about that twin experience on the journey because I don't know, you just need to say sometimes, you just need to say it out loud. And then I look back on that and they're some of my fondest memories because it was teaching me how to experience connection in a way that I could absorb. Because if someone had said, hey, you're experiencing real connection. You're being vulnerable. You're letting someone be vulnerable with you. I would have run for the hills.
Right.
But because I was so distracted by my healing in my body, I was able to experience it. It's sort of like looking at the sun, but like not directly. That's kind of how I had to approach connection. And so I got to like month 11 or something like that. And I was starting to put together the pieces of, okay, I went into this year looking for freedom. What am I finding? And increasingly it was starting to show that it was inner peace. And I was like, I think I've finally figured this bit out. Like, I need a new challenge now, because now I understand how dopamine works and I understand my relationship with it. I need a new goal. And so I was like, okay, let's pick the scariest fucking thing we can. And that for me was connection, So I shared on a meeting. It was a Kevin meeting. My voice just shook. It was not my name. And so I didn't even like answer when he called.
It's like, is this me?
Don't do. Why is it so quiet? Oh, this is boring. And yeah, and then one of our, like, I don't know, I probably can't say the name, but like a very well-known reframer hosted like this Zoom session over the Christmas and
yeah,
New
that was the first time I met you.
Yes.
I remember those. Yeah, the first time we actually interacted. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to dive in.
Yeah.
And I showed up in that Zoom and there were like 2 people in it. And I was like, oh, why is this happening?
I have to talk.
I went on mute. Oh. And I stayed on that Zoom the whole damn time. Like, it was open for like days. And if I was awake, I was in that Zoom. And I was talking to people and just connecting and starting to make friends. And then I had like this massive rush sort of come down, kind of thing, and had to process that and figure out, okay, what does that tell me? And then one of you guys that I met introduced me to Marco Polo, and then that was it. Like, so that's chapter 2 started, which was all about friends so to answer your question, everyone's overseas practically, like, but there's good parts to that because I wake up to a whole bunch of polos.
Yeah.
And that's so delightful, like to wake up and then all of your friends are there talking to you. I think that's part of the reason I say such nice things to myself in the morning. My friends taught me to do that. They did it first. So yeah, it's nice.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
I have a question, and I can't believe we haven't asked it yet. So what started your sober journey? Like, some people have like a big moment. Some people it's like a slow burn. Like, when did you realize something has to happen?
Well, for me, it was more about PTSD. So I didn't know I had it, and then like it tells you. There's no confusion when it lands, and so really it was my therapist. Like, I just started therapy, and she taught me this journaling technique to help with intrusive thoughts, and then I was so amazed at how effective that was. It's like, holy shit, this whole time, like, if I just wrote a page answering these 4 questions, I can make it stop. Like, I couldn't get over the power of that. And then that kind of sparked my curiosity. I was like, well, what else is out there? And then, like a lot of people, it was like, okay, I want to know if I can do this thing well, and I've just found out that I can manage this thing well, how can I do it perfectly? So I want to know everything that makes it worse. I want to know everything that makes it go away. And then, is there something on the other side of this? Like, is there a version of like super great mental health? Because if so, I want to know what feeds that. And then I kind of turned that into a little bit of a game. And so obviously, like, I mean, you don't even have to ask your therapist. You just Google, alcohol and PTSD. It's like Google just like
everything.
I'm saying it's sugar, so I was like, okay, I've got to get rid of all these things. And so I put together a little bit of a plan. And then I just wanted to know how many days I'd gone so I could keep track. which is how I came across Reframe, because I wanted the counter.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, daily tasks. And then that was it. Like, and as I started to learn things, I was like, son of a bitch. This whole time, like, I said this in a meeting last night. It was like, I knew alcohol's bad, loosely, right? But I also knew you celebrate with it, you commiserate with it, you have it after work, you have it at work. Like, sometimes there'll be work drinks, work events. Like, it's so welcome that, yes, it's bad for you, but let's not forget it's good for your heart. So it's like all these mixed messages that you never really investigate that much, because you're like, I just don't want to. But then as I was doing the daily tasks, it was like finding out that your husband is a serial killer, and you have irrefutable evidence, and you're like, I am going to fuck him up.
And he's like in the kitchen making a beautiful meal and just like the perfect little husband. Yeah, I get that.
I'm coming for you. Like, this whole time, my life has been a lie. I don't know, I locked into the anger, which wasn't something that like most women, right? Like, anger was not something that I would really show. And if it came up, I'd be like, well, what are you doing to contribute to this cat? Like, I kind of put it back on me, like, in a really messed up way. But not this time. Something was different. And I just embraced the anger. And I do things like, because now that I understood it was poison, and I was one of those people where I made that jump real quick. And I know that for some people, they'll just never agree to see it that way, which that's cool. For other people, it takes a really long time. But the minute that I understood it was a neurotoxin, chemically speaking, not even just using an insult, like it factually is, I was like, and I just turned it into this enemy. And I saw consuming it as an act of self-harm. So every time a craving came, it was like my ex, the serial killer, showing up at my door. And I'd be like, oh, you want to self-harm? All right. We're going to go for a run until we vomit, and we're not taking water. And then I would do that. And I'm like, we're not running in a circle, bitch. You're going to have to run back. All right? You want to self-harm? I can do this all day. Let's go. And I just kept doing that. Like, until it went away. Like, because I look back on it as sort of like I took a sledgehammer to normal. Once I understood what neural pathways were and how they work and how you can control them, I just obliterated my old normal to make space for something new to be built. And I didn't know what that was, but I didn't care either, because I was just too angry to care. And I'm glad, because then what I ended up building was pretty awesome. That's how it started for me.
So I'm gonna say that, like, I connect, and I think you probably were thinking the same thing. I connect with your story so much, and I'll go as far as to say, like, I have connected with every single person we've had on our podcast, and typically it's because neurodivergence, ADHD, all those things, and you and I connect too. But your story is the first one of sobriety that I have truly connected with, because and it's more of a parallel, it's not exact, but just about everyone I love and adore in my life has struggled with addiction and has about died from it, in all honesty. Like, Ryan could very well be dead right now. My brother, my best friend. Unfortunately, my mom passed last year. So, it was this monster that was built up already in my mind, right? This disease is what it was. It wasn't necessarily alcohol. And then, my brother got sober, Ryan got sober, my best friend's been sober since before I even met her. But last summer we were on vacation, and I was like, I'm going to have a little, drinky drink on the beach, because that's what we do. And, he's never had an issue with me drinking. From day one, he's like, you do whatever you want. You are not responsible for my sobriety. Like, I don't want to be treated differently. So, we have that. Exactly. And I've never been a huge drinker, but it's definitely been more like how do you go to a bar and not have a drink? How do you go to a wedding and not have a drink? How do you go to anywhere and not have a drink? And then it would be we got this bottle of wine and we would drink at home. It's like, how can you not? I mean, that obviously you can not. That's more of like a hypothetical question. But I just realized last summer I was like drinking it and like my belly hurt and my head hurt. And I woke up the next day and I was like, I did not feel good. And I only had one drink and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this is not fun. This doesn't make me feel good. I got like my heart started racing because I'm like overheated and now I have this alcohol in my system and I'm out on the beach and like, why am I even doing this? This is so fucking stupid. And so for me, it started out with, I think like I'm just not going to drink for a while. Like every time I drink, like it just gives me a migraine. I already get migraines. And he was like, honey, you do whatever you want. Like, obviously, you know how I feel about drinking, but you don't have an issue with it. So like, and even if you did, that's not for me to tell. Like, if you want to do it, great. And then fast forward, it just was, I didn't drink and I didn't drink and I didn't drink. And then a few months went by and I looked at him and I was like, it's been 3 months. It's been 4 months.
Didn't even realize.
And then, around December, I was like, you know what? I don't think I've had a drink in a while. And I went back and looked and literally went in to see when we were on vacation. I was like, I have not had a drink in 6 months. And he was like, that's pretty fucking awesome. And I said, I don't think I'm ever going to drink again. And he's like, that's a big statement. Are you sure you want to say that? I said, yeah, because even if I think about like if I'm somewhere and they're celebratory, if I decide to drink, it's going to be more because I feel socially pressured to partake in the ritual than it is that I'm actually going to want to drink. So why? Like, that's the dumbest thing in the world, I said, so I don't think I'm ever going to drink again. And then from there, this is where I resonate with you. It got me starting thinking about other things and researching other things. And then I was like, I think I'm going to join Reframe, because at first he had been, I don't know, I hadn't had a drink in like 3 or 4 months. And he's like, you should join Reframe. I was like, but I'm not like an alcoholic or, a previous drinker. Like I don't fit in this category. And he's like, you don't have to fit in this category. And I'm like, yes, I do. What do I have to give to anybody? Like nothing bad has ever happened to me because of alcohol. Lies. So that fast forwarded and I thought, you know what? That's not true. I've touched my lips to alcohol, but I've never had to touch my lips to alcohol for it to almost take everything from me. Just my husband. My mom wasn't a drinker. It was other things, but like, we'll say alcohol can really represent anything, right?
Yeah.
It is the thing. And I'm like, if that is alone is not enough to make me realize that not only do I not want to drink ever again because I get headaches and a bellyache, but because this monster, this demon has about ruined my life, even without me touching it. I want no part of it. And it was the same thing, like I want to be present. I want to be sober. I have lost time with those that I've loved that I'll never get back. I don't want to be fuzzy headed. I don't want to end up with cancer or liver disease. I don't want my daughter to grow up going, oh my gosh, mom always has a drink in her hand. I mean, even if it's just once a week, I don't want it to be that way. And so like, as you're telling your story, I resonate with it so much because even if like you don't have to have what society deems as a problem or an addiction or whatever to simply decide it is not bringing you anything and to change. Yeah. So it's interesting because even our daughter, like, I was like, I'm sober. And she's like, I thought you were always sober. And I was like, well, I mean, for society standards, sure. Do I get blackout drunk? No. Have I ever been arrested? No. Has anything that I've done from drinking ever caused something bad in my life? No. But that doesn't mean that that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean like, oh, just because you're not, just because you don't black out or do something stupid, then it's okay for you to drink. Like, no. Yeah. And so it doesn't bring me anything good. It's like, why do I want to partake in something that has almost destroyed the beautiful people I love? Like,
society saying to you, look, I know that you're married to a serial killer. I get that. I get he's hurt a lot of people. But he's never hurt you, though. Right. And I want you to remember that.
Like, right.
Fuck you.
Right. And it's funny, when you brought up the serial killer, like, husband, it made me think. So we were having a conversation one day, and, you know, you're right, alcohol, like, some of our best memories were when we were drinking, like, most beautiful, awesome moments. And you want to hold on to those and not beat yourself up, but also recognize that maybe they would have been better had you not been drinking. And so, you know, like, we'll bring up stuff, and we don't really, like, you know, it can be tricky because I don't ever want him to think like, oh, I'm just bringing up your drinking days. And so finally we were sitting there, and I was like, you know what? We'll call that my ex-husband. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, it really is like, you are not that person anymore. Like, it really is like you were reborn. So it's almost like I divorced that version of you, which is where it was headed. And I'm remarried, and I was like, we're still in the honeymoon phase of who you are now. And he was like, I love that. So anytime we talk about, like, drinking Ryan, that is my ex-husband. I call him my ex-husband. And even he's like, I fucking hate your ex-husband. That guy's a dick, you know? And I'm like, yeah, isn't he? Like, man, he was the worst. And it's perfect because it's the serial killer husband. It's right. So we do the same thing. I'm like, man, do you remember when my ex-husband, like, was so shitty and ruined our vacation, you know? And he's like, yeah, I hate that guy.
I do have to say, I've heard the word serial killer about like 10 times.
It's the woman. It's the women thing. Yeah.
And all I can think of is, what's up with all, you know, these serial killer shows and all that shit that you guys get into?
I do not partake. Like, I see that.
You don't?
as
Okay.
addiction. No, yeah.
I thought like, you did.
Because it turns on your fight or flight, and it makes you approach life like you're prey. Like, you see the world through the eyes of prey.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't live like that. Like, I very much believe in that thing of, you know, your thought patterns are kind of the product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I apply that to television as well. Like, all voices, all sounds that are coming in, podcasts, everything. Like, I mostly am made up of Real Housewives at this point. Like,
my
entire identity.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, and like, I like to watch the serial killer stuff, but it does get to the point where I'm like, okay, maybe I need to take a break from this, because then it is, you're right. Because, like, you'll go out of town. No, I mean, and I love you so much, but, like, if someone's going to break into our house and do something terrible, like, what the hell are you going to do? You know what I mean? This is not a movie, right? You are not Liam Neeson, right? Like, but it makes you go to these, like, stupid, ridiculous places because it's just television.
It's like the gratitude practice as well. Like, gratitude practice is, and it took me a while to figure this out. I only figured this out like the last year. It's not about not acknowledging the bad things. It's about not paying attention to them. Like, they still exist. You're not saying, it's not rose-colored glasses and pretending that bad things don't happen, that threats aren't there. You're still acknowledging them. And you'll act appropriately when you need to. But if that's all you're looking at, it becomes your whole world. And that's just such a sad way to live. And so I'm always looking to go the opposite direction and lean into that gratitude stuff of, okay, what are the things I'm excited about? What are the things that bring me joy? What are the things that I can play with? You know, like, I want life to be just a playground. And so that's kind of where I try to focus all of my attention. Real Housewives are great for that. Like,
right?
They are the best.
They are.
Greatest
It's about letting go. Like, there are bad things happening. And, you know, and this is not something I've come up with. This has been around forever, right? But in moments of tragedy, in those moments where you cannot pivot to gratitude because it's very real, you look for the helpers, look for the healers, look for the people who are helping, and mimic them. What can I do to help? What can I do? To mend. And if there's not anything that you can do, if it's something catastrophic, then what you do is you just exist in that moment. You just sit with that, right? And you're absolutely right. You know, and I'll even admit, like, you watch the murder documentaries and all of this stuff because it's your fucked up way of being like, well, I just need to watch something that makes me feel better about my own life or my own tragedy, and it goes here or there. But then you're just trying to mask something like dark with something even darker.
Yep.
As opposed to being like, you know, I know we want to be in control, and we lose senses of ourselves when we're like, but you didn't go this way and you didn't do this. You are never in full control.
No,
ever.
You can't see all the variables. And
No.
being okay with that is a work in progress for all of us all the time, especially when we've been through trauma. Like, because we're constant, like, left to our own devices and without the right coping tools, we will keep reliving that and going back and trying to perfect it. We try to run that reel again, and I'm going to do something. It's Groundhog Day, right? I'm going to change things until it works out in a way that doesn't hurt me. And then I'm going to try to identify in a new situation all the things that could be from that I can apply here. It's like you're trying to apply learning. So it's all with really good intentions, but it, like all maladaptive coping mechanisms, it has really negative consequences.
Yeah.
So yeah, gratitude for me is like a little bit of a trust fall towards the good, because this is the other thing, right? Agency becomes so important, and that sense of autonomy and believing that you are competent, believing that you are capable is so important to get that messaging right. And you are the only person who can convince yourself of that. No one else can convince you of that. It's an internal job. The reason that's so important is when those crises do hit, and they do, you'll be ready. Like, it's going to be okay. You will focus on the bad shit when you have a role to deal with the bad shit, either to stop the bleeding or to clean up afterwards, or to show up for someone and bear witness and support them as they run the show of cleaning up or stemming the bleeding or whatever it is, right? You will show up. So why do 1,000 trial runs so that when that day comes, you're exhausted? And also, you're working off a playbook that you invented for a different game. This tragedy has nothing to do with the one that you've been prepping for, that you've rehearsed 1,000 times. So you're going to insist on doing things that way, even though they're completely inappropriate for the situation that you're in. And it's because you haven't trusted your ability to respond in a reactive situation. And that lack of confidence is probably going to cause a whole bunch of problems. So you're basically making yourself the most useless version you could be. So that's the other reason that I think gratitude is so important.
Absolutely. And then, you get in this cycle where when life is calm and what I'll say is good and nothing is really going on, or you're having like life is like really good and all these great things are happening. And I struggled with this for a while. You get to a point where you can't just be happy because you're like, oh, that something bad's going to happen. The next shoe's going to drop. Something bad always happens to me. And listen, maybe not. And even if you are someone who is unfortunate and bad things constantly happen, you still have a right to enjoy your peace when you have peace. And that's a lot, now we're getting into like survivor guilt and all that. And that's like, that's what therapy teaches you. But yeah, I mean, all you do is you take away those moments of peace, which are vital to your recentering. And you're so right about that, because there are moments when really, really, really fucking shitty things are going to happen. And the best thing, the thing that I will give myself the most credit for, that I've worked really hard on, and I think you'll attest to this too, Ryan, over the past like 4 years, is when really big things happen, I've gotten very good about allowing myself to sit in it, and be like, okay, like it's okay to need a day in bed, even if you're not reading, like it's okay. You like that? Even if you're not sure, even if you really are being depressed and you're doing the things, so long as you don't stay there. And that's the hardest thing, because then I found myself like overcompensating, which I think is normal when you're in the beginning, right? Like, don't let yourself sit in it, be happy all the time. And then you go into which is even darker, like a toxic positivity. Everything else is like it's a balancing act. And something that has really helped me, even when my mom died, right, is going, I'm not going to try to escape this. Like, this is something huge. Like, I can't just be like, well, life goes on. Though that statement is true, then you're just burying your grief or whatever it is. And you have to sit in that moment. Maybe you have to go a week without showering and sitting in your room crying or whatever. But
100%.
make sure you tell somebody, make sure someone knows, just one person, and they know that you recognize what you're doing and that you need it for your mental health. Mm-hmm. And also know that there's a plan, that you don't stay there, that yes, life does go on and you have to move forward through it. And I think that's difficult. And that was sort of the first thing I mastered with my mental health, is because, you know, I was raised with these polars, right? It's either like, you know, doom and gloom and anxiety and fight or flight, or toxic positivity, you know, just
That's
the
not
best
there.
way to get over something is to stop talking about it. You know what I mean? And there really is a gray area in the middle, and it is so freeing, because then you can allow, like, you have to allow yourself to feel like sadness and hate and anger. Those things don't have to be negative. It's all about what you do with that. And
100%.
98% of the time, even in the most traumatic situations, in a matter of 6 months to a year, you're not going to be processing that the same way as before.
Yeah.
But if you allow those feelings and to project, you know, I always tell my daughter, once you put something out there, you cannot take it back. You can always change. You can always evolve. You can always, you know, get better. But once something is out there, you can't take it back. So having that wherewithal to go, I'm just going to allow myself to sit, like, what do you say, sit in the shitty diaper on my own, because I know that I'm not in a good space right now. That is also a very enlightened way of thinking. And so many people don't allow themselves to sit in that. And that is finding the gratitude in a shitty moment.
And the kindness to yourself as well.
Right.
Like, thoughts happen to you. They're not your identity. Emotions happen to you. They're not a choice you made. Feelings, on the other hand, are, because that's a perception of the emotion, right? So if someone makes you feel like shit, change the way you feel. Like, you can actually control that.
Exactly.
You can't control the emotion. You can't, but you can just, like, pick another one. Like, you can't erase that it's happened. But, like, I found out last year or the year before that guilt exists in the body for 48 hours.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's like, if we just kind of stop trying to blame ourselves for everything, I guess, and say, you know, like I see someone who has something awesome and I feel this massive flare of envy, right? I'm not a bad person. Like, I see envy as a flare. It's a flare gun. And what it's done is it's shot this ball of fire up into the sky and it's told me where to look. I'm going to find happiness if I chase that thing, is what it's saying to me. Now, whether or not it's true, different story, right? You've got to investigate and figure out if you actually do want that thing. And is there something deeper that you're actually looking for? But if I sit with that lit flare, it will burn my house down. So it's external to me, but like you said, it's what I do with it. And the way into sort of having a healthy relationship with these negative emotions, quote unquote, I think, is accepting that they are happening to us. They're not part of your identity any more than negative thoughts are part of your identity. Create that space. And you can physically do it. Like, there's a muscle in the brain that meditation will make bigger. And just like your thigh or your bicep, you can make it bigger. And when that happens, you will see these things as separate from your identity. And then you can sit with them for as long as they need to be physically in your body. And then you can let them go. And you move on to the next bit. Like,
and you don't even see them as negative anymore. You're like,
just things.
If anything else, you know, guilt is never good, but these emotions that trigger unwanted feelings that were not uncomfortable feelings, they teach you a lot about yourself. Like, there's no guilt or regret. I mean, we're always going to look back and be like, oh, I should have done better. Okay, then do better next time.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, you don't need to go back and remediate what you did before. Just be a kinder or better. Like, now that you know, do better. That's it. It really, I love how you said, like, the emotions versus the feelings, because, like, feelings are the actions that you take in response to your emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like you can feel sadness and you can feel regret without feeling guilt. You know, you can be like, I regret the way I treated someone, or I regret the way I handled that. Don't feel guilty about it. Recognize it, make amends if possible, and then move on. And I always tell my daughter, don't be a repeat offender. Like
Yeah.
that's honestly the worst thing you can do. Like it's easy to take an A. It's not easy to take an F and then pick your face up off the floor and try something different and then still make the F and then pick your face up off the floor and try something different, and you keep that cycle. That's what success and progress looks like until you figure out what you're doing right. But if you're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over, you got to break that cycle. I love how you said that. Feelings are really just like the actions that we take upon our emotions. I love that whole dynamic. I think that's super smart.
I liked what you were saying as well about like, you know, when you're having that day where you just need to just be in bed and just cry and just feel sad. I think for me, I didn't realize that my emotions couldn't kill me. I had this undiscovered belief that my emotions could in fact kill me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that about myself, you know, until I sort of like went on this journey. And so that's why I was running away from them. And that really helped because it gave me control. So here I was like trying to learn how to let go of control because I was quite addicted to control because of, you know, everything we were talking about. You know, it's like, I've got to be ready. I've got to be ready for when it happens. Like something good's just happened. You know what that means. Everything's about to, you know, fall apart. Like, so I was trying to break my addiction to control, which was the real thing for me. And then through that process, I kind of discovered that I have, like, I can survive every single one of these quote unquote bad emotions, and I can survive joy that is foreboding joy. I can survive that. I can get to the other side of that. And if it means staying in bed for a couple of days and just waiting it out because, you know, it's a chemical reaction. They have timelines. Like, it's sort of like Wizard of Oz. There's someone behind the curtain. It's just a person with machinery. Like, your emotions aren't this esoteric, you know, intangible, mystical thing. They're a chemical process happening in a living organism. They have a timeline. You can run out the clock. So if you need to, run out the clock, man. That's all you got to do sometimes. Like, but I didn't know that. And so I was trying to outrun it, like run away from it. Literally, figuratively, like I said, you know, in the beginning with my running, like I was quite literally outrunning a craving because I didn't understand yet that it couldn't kill me. That was a big kind of revelation, I think. Yeah, it's interesting. But like with depression, I consider myself very, very lucky because my mental health stuff is now contained, and like anything, everything's mutable, right? Like, I don't know if that's going to last forever. I don't know if something's going to happen tomorrow. But today I feel great. And most days I feel like this contentment, and I'm just really fucking grateful for that because I can compare it. And when I look back, I'm like, God, today is the best day that like could have ever happened, you know, because it's that golf game. There's no thunderstorm while I'm walking around with a metal stick.
and this is honestly why we have doctors and therapists, and this is why we push that, right? This is why we always say, like, we are not medical professionals, because I will say to anybody listening, if you get in the bed with the intention of crying for 24 hours and then you cannot pull yourself out of it, there's a component of that too that is beyond your control.
Yes.
And I should have said that I worked really hard on that with the help of my medical professional and with proper diagnosis and proper support, right? Like, it's not like one day I was like, I'm just going to allow myself 24 hours to be sad. And then I was like, poof, I'm perfect at this. It took a lot of breaking things down, and along with my doctor and myself and different tools, learning how my brain specifically processes information, you're right, that timeline, and how everything works. And then being able to use my logic and resources to understand, well, this is why this is happening. And maybe, and there's nothing I can do about it right now, but maybe if I do this and then formulating a plan and having that there, you know, like even with my best friend, right? It's like, she's like, if you're in bed for more than 48 hours when something bad happens, I'm coming over because that's unusual for you.
Yeah.
And that means that like, you're probably not going to get out of bed. And so you need sort of like a splash of cold water in the face to like restart that system. That hasn't had to happen, but having those things in place too, you know, that's why we have that. It took me a really long time to get there, but I'll say once I got there, sometimes it's like how beautiful the sun is right after rain. Sometimes I feel the best and the most confident and the most grateful the day after I've allowed myself to lay in the bed and cry and not shower. And I take that shower the next day and I get dressed and I look and I'm like, where are we going for lunch? Like, I look fucking beautiful. Take me out and show me off somewhere, because I've allowed myself that time. I don't beat myself up over it. I've had that emotional cleansing and now I'm ready to move on. And I'm not escaping it because I allowed myself that space. I'm not pushing it down. I did it. And now I'm done. And I'm ready for you to put me on your arm and take me out because I look hot now and I'm clean and I shaved and my teeth are brushed. So where the hell are we going? And it's a great feeling, you know, because you've allowed yourself to go through it all. So I really enjoy that part
too. Right. Like, it is completely individual. And the last thing I want is anyone to think, oh, just, you know, follow these steps. And all of us are like, no, because that's the whole point, right? Is that you are your own organism. You are unique. No one else is like you. And so the first gift that you give yourself has to be hearing yourself, clearing out all of the noise so you can hear your body talk to you, you can hear your mind talk to you, you can hear that little tiny voice in a situation that's supposed to be fun, that is all about you, like whatever, right? That little tiny voice that says, can we go home now? I don't like it here. Can we go home now? I don't feel safe. Or whatever, like being able to hear that voice and then get to a point where you trust that voice because she is you and she's communicating what your body is experiencing. So I count my blessings that I don't have clinical depression, or, you know, for a while they thought I had generalized anxiety. It was like all this confusion, right? Because everyone's trying to solve the puzzle that is you. But if you're not listening, if you're not able to listen because all of these external things are in the way, including people telling you what you should feel, what you should think, like that's external noise as well. And that drowns out that really important voice because it's the cipher. It solves the puzzle. That voice is a genius. So it's platform. And that for me is like everything.
Yeah.
You know,
your body will tell you what's wrong. If you don't give it grace and a break,
100%,
it'll take it.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way, the very hard way. Yeah. You know, you don't get sleep. I mean, just fundamentals. You don't get sleep. You don't drink enough water.
Nothing.
You eat like shit.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Your body eventually is going to be like, fuck you. Watch this.
What your things are as well, like again with the games analogies that I just live in. So I see my health, like the 4 quadrants of my health, as a game of chess. So sobriety is my king, because it's my top value, because it makes all of my other values possible. Like it's just given me so many health benefits that I never want to lose that. So if we're talking about my health, that's my king. Sleep is my queen. And then the other ones kind of get a little bit murky, but like my rook is movement, but I include meditation in movement because it's about building that muscle in my brain. Nutrition, which is my relationship with my microbiome in particular. Like I'm constantly trying to learn everything that's going on with that, and also getting my own like numbers run. Like I want to know what my bugs are and what they need, and, you know, like personalize my diet to produce the butyrate and whatever else that is going to give me beautiful chemicals that make me feel really good. So the minute that I notice one of my important pieces is off the board, so like my sleep, if that's been messed with, especially if it's more than 2 days, everything else shuts down. Like you cannot get anything from me because Computer says no. Like, and I never used to be like that. I was very much, other people's opinion of me mattered so much more to me than my own opinion, that I would deliberately, performatively try to break myself to show you just how much you mean to me. I'm going to do this thing despite the fact that I'm running on 3 hours sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I haven't had 7 hours sleep, you're not getting me. Like, and I'm sorry, I don't care if I don't care.
You don't have anything to give anyway.
Yeah, you're just drained.
Yeah,
like I'm going to be useless. But even regardless of that, like I don't. At that, if my queen is off the board, I'm resetting the board, and you can't get me to do anything else until that has been repaired, because nothing else matters to me. I've just like made it a priority now.
I love
and you kind of, that's the beauty of time, is that you get to reset that board whenever you want. So it's sort of like that thing you hear in meetings all the time. Someone will say, I've had a really shit day. And it's like, yeah, but it's 11 o'clock. You had a shit morning. What you're after.
Yeah.
You can break this day in half.
Yeah.
It's not like locked in gold that there's a 24
You can break it down in an hour, 10 minutes. So you had a shitty 10 minutes or 20 minutes for a craving, whatever. Fuck it. Let's move on. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I do that with my board, and like, I'll know when, because sometimes if it looks like a couple of the pieces are moving off at the same time, maybe it's only one night of bad sleep, and maybe it was 7.5 hours, but I woke up in the middle, and so I woke up not feeling super rested. But at the same time, I ran out of kimchi, and they don't have it in the store anymore. Right? That's 2. Now we've got our queen is under threat. Our bishop is nowhere to be found. We've got a problem. So don't bring me any of your stuff. Whatever is going on in your life, I am not your gal.
That sounds like our daughter. She loves kimchi. Oh my God. We got to the point where we had to stop buying it because our whole house smelled like one big fart. I was like, people will come into this house and think that someone is literally shitting in the corner somewhere. I'm like, I can't stand it.
She'd leave the lids.
And I know it's so good. Why are all the best things for you? Why do they all smell like poop? Like, come on. I'm going to say this is a perfect segue when we're talking about like our bodies telling us stuff. And this is the first time I've asked this question to a guest. And did you prep Kat on the question?
She listens.
Yeah. Okay. The whole time we're talking about these things, I'm like, this is the perfect segue to the question. So we've kind of changed the end question of our podcast a little bit. So the whole purpose, just so everyone knows, is with this, you get sober and we're talking about guilt, right? And it's so easy to look back and think about, get down on yourself. I love, talking like shit about yourself, about all the stupid things that you did or the people you've hurt and hurting yourself and all that. But life is for enjoyment. And if you cannot laugh and hold space for some of just the ridiculously funny moments, then you really will eat yourself alive with the guilt. So with all of that said, we've changed it a little bit. We used to ask everybody what their favorite pee story is. And it has to be like a drunken one. And then we decided to open it up. It doesn't have to be a pee story. It could just be your most memorable or funniest drunken story. You could have done it. A friend could have done it. Just when you look back, every time you think about it, it just makes you laugh. It breaks sort of the ice a little bit and makes you laugh.
Oh, okay. I did have a pee story about someone else.
Let's hear the pee story.
Yeah, bring it.
But I kind of like this other story though. that's not about that.
That's okay.
Well, we're going to have you back on the show, so we love a good cliffhanger.
Okay, so in Australia we have this place in Sydney called Luna Park, and Luna Park is like it's like a theme park, but it's really old, and so it kind of has, I don't know, maybe this is just my opinion of it, but I associate it with like old Australia, like kind of like you guys have old Hollywood stuff. Like I think of Luna Park as like an era where black and white photos of it. And
Gotcha.
Anyway. So it's right next to the Harbour Bridge, which obviously is quite famous. And on New Year's, we blow up the bridge, we say, because all the fireworks come off the bridge. And so this one year I went with friends to Luna Park, and it was super expensive. Like I saved for months and months and months to be able to get us these like gold passes, like everyone paid for their own. It's not that much of a people pleaser. And so got these gold passes, and like you you would drink. Like they had, frozen vodka slushies and stuff like that. But you go on all the rides at Luna Park. So it was like this blend of childlike wonder and the fireworks, and you're like right underneath them. It was so glamorous. Like it's wonderful. And so I'm wearing these massive heels because I was in my 20s and I didn't understand yet what that would do. And we're all done up to the nines. We start to go home and the trains stop. So we're like, oh, so we have to walk across the Harbour Bridge to get home. What? Like, yeah, like the bridge is closed because of the fireworks. You could have Googled it, kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to walk across the bridge, which is like a whole thing. Like it's a big fucking bridge.
Oh, yeah.
So like hundreds of people, if not thousands, are walking across this bridge. And then when we get to the other side, all of the roads are closed because it's the CBD, which for us is a central business district. It's like, downtown kind of area. All of the roads are closed, which means no taxis. So the trains aren't working. There are no buses and no trains because the roads are closed in the CBD. So we continue to walk. Now we're clocking up to about an hour and a half of walking in these hills. Yeah, Sydney's big. Sydney's really big. And I lived on the coast, so it's like a 20-minute bus ride from the CBD to my house. We finally get to a part of the city. The makeup by this point is just like just very angry women. We finally get to a point where there are taxis. And so we hailed taxi after taxi after taxi. And they'd ask where we were going, and it wasn't far enough, so they would just drive off.
Oh, wow.
And we got home pretty much as the sun was coming up. My feet never recovered. Like I've never been angrier. And it was such a juxtaposition because it was this spectacular, glorious night that just ended like a fucking horror movie. But like no one would help us.
I can envision that in a movie or something, and it's got to be great. Have you seen those pictures that parents will show and they're like, my kid on their first day of school at the beginning of the day, and they're all their hair's perfectly braided and they're so cute and they're little, and then at the end of the day, they just look like a wet mop,
And the hangover's already kicking in as well because
you're I'm drunk and hungover all at the same time.
It's not a peace story because we couldn't.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, were we paying attention to that? Every single step we were noticing that this was not going to be a peace story. We're really upset about that.
I was going to ask if you had a picture of the aftermath, and if you did, I was going to be you have to send it to me.
So bad.
That's awesome. I can just imagine these trolls of women hunched over can I get a ride,
By the end it probably wasn't because the fare was so short. They were these are not safe people.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want them in the back of my car.
The coven needs a ride home. I love it.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This was great. This was a lot of fun. It was great to get to know you even more.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Yeah. Cuddles.
Yeah.
Cuddles. Love you, girl. Talk
Thanks,
to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to get notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby. Word.